Here's why Viserys allowed the Greens to rise before his death. He was the king who wanted peace, and in his silence, he gave birth to war. King Viserys I Targaryen ruled for more than 2 decades, presiding over what many call one of the most peaceful periods in Westerosi history. But beneath the feasts, the tournaments, and the laughter of court, a storm was gathering. The Greens, Alicent Hightower, Otto Hightower, and their faction, rose in influence and power while Viserys, the man who wore the crown, looked the other way. By the time of his death, they were no longer just a faction. They were a shadow government, ready to seize the Iron Throne in the name of Aegon II. And Viserys had allowed it to happen. Why? Why did a king with the authority to crush their ambitions simply refuse to act? Tonight, we'll uncover the truth behind Viserys' greatest failure. How his love for peace blinded him to the coming civil war. Why he ignored Rhaenyra's warnings about Alicent and Otto. How the Greens quietly tightened their grip on power while the king withered. And why Viserys' inaction wasn't just weakness. It was the spark that ignited the dance of the dragons. This is not just the story of a king who couldn't rule. It's the story of how his silence doomed his family and the realm. Let's begin. The king who hated conflict. To understand why Viserys allowed the Greens to rise, we must first understand the man himself. King Viserys was not like his grandfather, Jaehaerys the Conciliator. Jaehaerys was wise, cunning, and unafraid to make the hard choices that secured his legacy. Viserys, on the other hand, was gentle. Too gentle. He loved peace more than power. He hated conflict more than failure. And most of all, he wanted his court and his family to be happy, even if it meant turning a blind eye to their schemes. This desire for harmony defined his reign. When his first wife, Queen Aemma Arryn, died in childbirth, the realm expected him to remarry for political strength. Instead, he followed his heart and chose Alicent Hightower, a match that pleased Otto Hightower far more than it did his lords. Viserys wanted love. Otto wanted power. By marrying Alicent, Viserys unwittingly handed the Hightowers a foothold in the Red Keep. Otto became Hand of the King once again. Alicent became queen and soon bore Aegon, Helena, and Aemond, children who, in the eyes of many, should have displaced Rhaenyra as heir. But Viserys refused to see it. He clung to his promise that Rhaenyra would inherit the throne, convinced that love and loyalty would hold his family together. He was wrong, because while he looked the other way, Otto and Alicent were already planting the seeds of their faction. The rise of the Greens. The Greens didn't rise overnight. Otto Hightower was too clever for that. He built his power quietly, brick by brick, using Viserys' passivity as his shield. The first step was influence. Otto positioned his allies in key positions at court. He rewarded those who pledged loyalty to Alicent's children and froze out those who supported Rhaenyra. The second step was isolation. As Rhaenyra grew older, she was slowly pushed away from her father's inner circle. Otto whispered doubts in Viserys' ear, subtly poisoning him against anyone who might challenge Alicent's influence. The third step was appearances. The Greens turned the royal court into a stage. They held feasts where Alicent's children sat in places of honor. They encouraged lords and ladies to show public deference to Aegon, as though he were already the future king. And through it all, Viserys did nothing. Even when Otto openly clashed with Rhaenyra, the king merely sighed and told them to set aside their quarrels. He dismissed every warning, every sign that the realm was dividing. When Rhaenyra married Laenor Velaryon and her sons were born, the Greens whispered their illegitimacy into every ear in the Red Keep. Viserys exploded once, demanding that his family put an end to the rumors. But after that, nothing. No punishment. No decisive action. His desire for peace became paralysis. By the time Aemond lost his eye in the fight at Driftmark and Alicent lunged at Rhaenyra with Viserys' own dagger, the Greens no longer feared the king. They had realized the truth. Viserys would never act. And because he wouldn't act, they could. Why Viserys did nothing. Many call Viserys weak. But the truth is more complicated. He wasn't blind to the Green's growing power. He simply chose not to confront it. Here's why. 1. His love for Alicent. Viserys truly loved his second wife. Even when she defied him, even when her family's ambition was plain as day, he couldn't bring himself to act against her. Confronting Otto and Alicent would have meant tearing his own household apart, and Viserys hated nothing more than family strife. 2. His illness and decline. As the years passed, Viserys' health crumbled. His body weakened. His pain grew unbearable. And with every passing year, his ability to govern faded. The court saw it. Otto saw it. Alicent saw it. And in his absence, they filled the void. By the end of his reign, Viserys was a ghost in his own castle, present but powerless. 3. His faith and promises. Viserys believed that naming Rhaenyra as heir was enough. He thought the lords of the realm would honor their oaths. He thought Alicent would accept his will. But Westeros does not run on promises. It runs on power. And while Viserys clung to his ideals, Alicent and Otto built their faction in secret, preparing for the day when promises would mean nothing. 4. His fear of civil war. Above all, Viserys dreaded the idea of Targaryens fighting Targaryens. The memory of Maegor the Cruel still haunted the realm, and Viserys swore his line would never again descend into such bloodshed. So, every time he was faced with a choice, punish Alicent or look away, remove Otto or keep him close, silence the Greens or forgive them, he chose the path of least resistance. He chose silence. But silence is not peace. It is only the pause before the storm, the price of his inaction. By the time Viserys lay on his deathbed, the Greens no longer needed to hide their ambition. Otto Hightower effectively ruled the court. Alicent commanded loyalty from half the great houses. Aegon had been groomed not just as a prince, but as a king in waiting. And Rhaenyra? She was far away on Dragonstone, surrounded by enemies she didn't even realize were plotting against her. When Viserys took his final breath, he still believed his family would honor his will. He thought his word was law. He thought the crown would pass peacefully to Rhaenyra. Instead, the moment he died, the Greens struck. They locked the gates of King's Landing. They crowned Aegon II, and they silenced anyone who dared speak for Rhaenyra. This was not a sudden coup. It was the inevitable result of years of inaction. Viserys had allowed the Greens to rise unchecked. He had given them the time, the power, and the confidence to seize the throne the moment he was gone. In the end, his greatest fear came true. The realm burned. His children turned on each other. So why did Viserys allow the Greens to rise before his death? Because he was a king who loved peace more than power. He chose family over discipline. He chose silence over confrontation. And in doing so, he gave Alicent and Otto Hightower the freedom to shape the court into their own. Viserys believed that his word was enough to hold the realm together. But the Iron Throne does not reward dreamers. It punishes them.